Yep.
Oh,
Oh, halfway.
Hello.
Man.
Yeah,
Come
man.
on.
What do you want?
All right, so I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to pass it over to Kevin. Good morning, everybody, and
Good
glad to
morning.
see everybody again.
Morning.
So for those of you guys that have done this with us before, it's real easy. Anybody new, just remember, if you can't hear something, do like that. If you have a question, raise your hand, or there's a little hand button, question button. Let's let Kevin go through some stuff. If there is something that you want to ask, go down into the little chat box and click into the chat box, just so you don't forget, the questions that you might want to have. This way we can get him on a roll, and we can get a lot of good information in a short period of time. Did I forget anything other than, everybody mute unless you have a question, so that way we don't get a lot of background noises. So when you have that question and you want to, ask it, just click yourself out of mute, and when you're done, click yourself back in the mute. Sounds good? Everybody good? Thumbs up? Everybody
Yeah, just
yours?
give me a second. I'm trying to figure out why I can't scroll through these real quick.
Oh.
I don't know what's going on.
And we're going to be recording this morning. So don't say anything that your parents would not appreciate, so that kind of, or grandparents.
Parents.
So that'll put us to a whole different level of niceness. Everyone doing okay this morning?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah?
Come on.
Doing great.
Good.
All right, there we go. Kind of looks like it's settled in a little bit. We'll see.
All right.
All right, so we're ready to get started?
Yep, take it away.
So obviously we're back at this again. We're here trying to navigate through things and figure out some things. So I kind of put a little presentation together, and hopefully either you'll get something out of this, but this is kind of where my thought process has been after talking to a bunch of agents daily and figuring out certain things that we could do and how we could attack certain avenues of this. But one thing that really popped in my mind, I sat down, I was like, well, so how can I lay this presentation out for this to make sense to them? And the first thing that happened to pop up was this Google ad, and it was a race car. And I thought to myself, how could I tie in a race car into what I want to talk about today? So, Stephen, I know you like cars. What's some of the key things in like a race car that that you could share with us? Tell me what you know about a race car.
Well, it's expensive, a lot of cash. Durability, especially the one you have up there, the 24 hours of Le Mans, 24 hours of Daytona. So it's durability. It's a long haul race. It's not a short sprint.
Yeah, keep going.
Stripped down to the bare minimum, just what's needed to get the job done. There's nothing else in there. There's no radios, no air conditioning, there's no leather, there's no dashboard. Just what's needed to make the car do what it needs to do. And it's set up to specifically handle the course it's going down now. So its camber and its handling is set up to handle that track and that specific track.
Perfect. Now, what's interesting about that is you take a bunch of these race cars, you put them on the track at the same time. Stephen, would you agree that they're pretty much identical, pretty much similar? They have to stay within specs of each other, what they need to be, or can you have one that has an advantage over the other, or you have to figure out how to find that when you're on the track?
You have to find that when you're on the track.
Right. So that's a couple things that I wanted to talk about today, is using this race car analogy, is having the right mindset in your real estate business as you're starting to go through these times. And by doing that, you'll see that we recognize with a race car and a race car track that we have what? We have straightaways that we can drive down. We have turns that we navigate into. And how many turns do we have? Basically, I mean, we could say we have 4 turns, but for today's analogy, we're going to say we have 2 turns, right? And then we have 2 straightaways. Now, what's interesting about that is when you're in the straightaways, right? Now, let's compare like a race car to a realtor, for example. as we're navigating through our markets, we're driving, we're all in the straightaways, we're all next to each other, whether it's us, it's our competitors, it's who we work with, it's whoever that scenario is that we're looking for. But what's the only one thing that we can really do? We can only really do what, Stephen? Push down the gas and hope the car goes as fast as it can, right? Before we get to the turn. And what starts to happen is as we're driving, we're taking these straightaways and we're building our business. We're looking at the differentiating parts of the drivers that are next to us, which is our competition and who we're dealing with. So if we just put the pedal down, what's going to happen is when we start to hit those turns, right, we recognize that in our business models, we have to pivot, right, Stephen? We have to shift, we have to accelerate, we have to get out of the way, we have to maneuver in front, to the side, to the left. And even as we're going fast and as fast as we can, momentum does what? It pushes us up against the wall. And as it pushes us up against the wall, it makes us uncomfortable. We may have to downshift, upshift, whatever we have to do in order to get us around the competition and what we're doing. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Use the whole track at all times.
Absolutely. So how we turn that into you is how you handle the maneuvering that comes into play when you're in your race car and you're driving. You know, the shifts in the market, you have to pivot, our business practices. Those are the turns that we have to sit back and we have to take a look at and say, how are we going to navigate through these different turns in order to make things happen the way that they're supposed to? So the one thing I want to do is I want to break it down and I want to talk about the straightaway first. So what is the straightaway? The straightaway is how we determine different things as far as what we want to look at in our business models is, and these are, and I don't want to use the term successful real estate agent and unsuccessful real estate agent. I want to use some of these analogies and things that you're going to see here as successful mindsets and practices as compared to unsuccessful mindset and practices. Now, I can tell you firsthand, being in the business for 20 years and managing a lot of top producers, and you know, all the way down to a brand new level agent, you really get to see the differences. And when you read some of the things on the unsuccessful side, and if you put those into your mind and say, hey, do I do that? Or if I do that, how can I move it over to the green side? You're going to see, I can guarantee you that the ones in the blue, I see it a lot. And it really, it'll either impinge or it'll put a damper on their business, and it literally holds them back. So some of the ones that I wanted to talk about today, we'll go through. So the difference between success and unsuccess, successful, we could say, is, you know, agents that embrace change and challenges. So that's where we're at right now, right? We have to embrace change. We have to deal with the challenges, or we could do what? We could avoid the change and we could just stay comfortable the way that we are. We talk about forgiving others, having empathy. Do we hold grudges, resentment? That's more on the client side, right? You know, if we have an argument with a client or something doesn't go well, do we hold resentment against them, grudges against them, or do we just move on and forget? Successful people, successful agents are always constantly learning. They always try to learn something new daily. We're not just the I know it all. I know everything. I know this. I know. Listen, there's a ton of them out there. If you change that mindset and be constantly learning, your business will explode. The differences between controlling time, right? Decisions and priorities, or do we just sit back and do we complain about the lack of time that we're given? So complaining is the number one killer in this business as far as well as communication. But we talk about, you know, accepting responsibility of what we do within our business model. Do we accept the responsibility when something happens or something goes wrong, or do we tend to blame others and say, well, this didn't happen? That's a great one. I'll just break that down and even into a file standpoint. You know, it's interesting. As brokers, we go to a closing and then we have to turn into a file. And when we turn into a file, all necessary documents need to be in there. So obviously, one, in case there's something that happens after the fact, or there's a lawsuit, or the real estate commission wants to come down, they want to take a look in those files. All those documents need to be there. That's one of the reasons why we really make sure that we have everything before you end up getting paid. But talking about that, a great little example is, I'll have an agent turn in a file, and the agent will turn a file and say, well, the title company didn't give me a copy of the deed. They didn't give me a copy of this. They didn't give me a copy of the CO. They did. So instead of just blaming other people, just accept responsibility and get those documents and already have those documents before you even turn in the file. So that's an example. We talk about seeking out failure as a means of growth. So there's two sides of people. One is they either seek out failure as a means of growth and they grow upon that, or they look at fear as a failure. And that happens far too often, where fear is, a failure becomes a fear to us. Are we setting goals and activities and trying to actually reach them, or are we just solve problems one crisis at a time? So for team leaders, for example, that's a great one for you guys. Team leaders and managers and everything like that. There's a difference between a leader and a manager. A leader would fall into that category of setting goals, setting activities, trying to reach them, trying to gauge them, where I've always referred to the manager role as the one who runs around with a fire extinguisher, putting out every crisis as soon as it comes up. As soon as it comes up, they're Weichert managers. They spray it with the fire hydrant or with the fire, whatever you call that thing, and then you move on to the next one, right? So take that mindset with teams and being team leaders. Be leaders, not team managers. Are we working on performing daily income producing activities? Or do we only focus on business serving duties? Now, the difference between those, if you were on my last call, we talked about business planning during COVID-19. And one of the things that we talked about, the number one part of the business plan was growth. Number two was administration. And number three was focusing on yourself, those three key things. So that plays into the second part of that. Daily producing activities come first, but don't just focus on the servicing side of the business. This is a big one. Do we need to overanalyze and use perfection as a standard? No, we don't need to do that. On the success side of things, they avoid the need to make things perfect. They let things go. They recognize that things won't always be perfect, but it just changes that mindset. We get into, do we believe the only way to make more money is to work harder? Well, that's, what happens when you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over? What do they say? That's almost insanity. So maintain life balance and lead others to hold you up to the standards. That could be your family, having your family chip in with you. I use, especially with business planning, I tell agents all the time, I said, listen, when you break your goals down and you break things down, break them down into short tangible goals, let's go quarterly, for example, or monthly. What's something that you want in that quarter? Figure out what that is, print that out, put that up on the refrigerator, and let your family hold you accountable for you trying to achieve that goal. This is a big one too. Do we resent successful agents and criticize them? How often does that happen? Or do we use their success or the success of others as motivation? I can tell you, and I won't use names, but I know 3 agents in the Mulligan Hill office that are very, very, very big on utilizing the success of others as motivation. And I can tell you, out of those individuals, they are well above average producing agents. So they fall on that side. So their mindset has gone that direction. Do we stick to budgets, focus on net income? That's what we want to do. The other side of that is agents where they don't track costs. They only focus on sales volume, right? So that's the whole profit and loss part of that. And then this is just such a super huge one. Make small continuous improvements in your business. That falls on the successful side of things instead of I just want it all now. When you jump onto the blue side of wanting it all now, you run into that scenario where your mind is all over the place. You're the classic ADD, ADHD candidate because your mind is in so many different directions. You're losing focus of the small continuous improvements that you need to do in your business. And usually what happens is all of those things that you put together in thought patterns and processes, they never take place and they never happen and they just fall by the wayside. And then last but not least is something that I want to get your mind working into is operating from a transformational perspective instead of just a transactional perspective. All right, does any of those make sense? You know, the differences between, you know, success mindset and unsuccessful mindset. I want you to take everything and try to start focusing on that green side of that category and figure out in the blues that where do you fall? You know, do I do any of these things that I could make small little improvements and it change my business mindset? It's all about mindset. So going into turn one, so if we come out of that straightaway, right, we're tearing down the straightaway, we've had to pedal to the metal, we've recognized the differences between some success things that we can do to being unsuccessful. We can change some mindset as we're going down there, because remember, we all have the pedal down to the floor, we're going as fast as we can. We have, you know, competitor one to the left, competitor one to the right, but we all seem to either be in that line or we're in a group. So now going into the turn number one, we have to figure out how to navigate and figure out what's going to separate us to be able to get through that pack, right, in order to hit the next straightaway. So as we go into turn one, I want to take a couple minutes to talk about value propositions and, you know, what that means. So if you don't have a value proposition, or you can't relay your value proposition to your clients in under 30 seconds, it's something that really needs to be worked on. So your value proposition, and we'll talk about some bigger businesses as we go through this, that's basically who you are. It's what you are. It's your value. And what's interesting about it is it needs to be delivered and communicated and acknowledged in order for that to be successful and people to understand what your value proposition is. So we need to figure out, if we're looking at a bunch of tomatoes, green tomatoes here, they didn't do apples, they did tomatoes, is how I found. What makes us red? What makes us stand out going into that turn? How are we going to pivot? How are we going to maneuver? How are we going to accelerate through the rest of that competition? So in a value proposition, or sometimes also known as, we can call them UVPs, right, which is a unique value proposition too. There's different terms depending on who you're coaching with or what coach model you're using. But one thing I want to talk about, and I'll get back to this, is understanding what pain is. So within a value proposition, there always has to be a pain in order to see if your value proposition fits into that pain. Okay, the pain meaning the objection or the argument of what is being said to you, and your value proposition of what is being sold back. So we need to work on the message within your value proposition. You know, what is your unique value proposition message? What is it that you tell people? What is it that you tell clients when you're in a listing appointment? What's the message? Number one. Number two, what is the market? The intended recipients of the message, or the demographics or location of what you're trying to push out there, right? So once we have the message, we can figure out what the market is. And then the third component is, what is the media platforms that we're using to do that? You know, what are the channel methods that we're using to send our message out to the intended recipients? The message, you have to have that. You have to have a value proposition in order to be successful in your business, to separate yourself from the rest of the pack. Now, what's unique about this is, if we take the three key components of this, you know, number one is we talk about, you know, what does your brand, what your brand does well. Number two is what the consumer wants, and then what does your competitor do well, or what your competitor does well. And then, interestingly enough, anywhere in those components, you can see that we have a winning zone, a losing zone, and we have an area that's just risk. If we take all three of those key components and we put those together, it creates risk. Because, yeah, our brand does well. Okay, of course, our competitor does well. We know what the consumer wants, but if I don't have anything that separates myself between the two sides, then I fall into the risky category, right? And if I utilize what the consumer wants to what I have to what my brand recognition is between the two, that's the ultimate win zone, because that separates me from my competition. The other two, between the two brands, who cares? Nobody cares. But when the consumer jumps into that, that's when the care process takes place. What we don't want to have happen is what the competitor does well, what the consumer wants, and what we don't know. That's the losing zone. So your value proposition has to be able to separate those circles and keep those circles into that green zone and try to stay out of the risky part of that. The risky part is the ones who don't have a value proposition. You're flying by the seat of your pants. You're going into a listing presentation realizing that you're being interviewed by a seller who's interviewing 3 or 4 other agents at the same time. So if you don't have a value proposition to set you apart from everybody else, that's when you fall into that yellow risky part. 3 key areas. How does your services work? What are your services? Do you know what your services are to be able to share with everybody, to be able to share with the consumer and put out there, these are my services? And what makes your services valuable? Now, I'm not talking about just going in and saying, well, you know, I work with buyers, I work with sellers, and they're my services, and sometimes I do some bank stuff, and yeah, so when you like to list with me, what makes that? What separates that? What makes value in that? And why is it that you're a better agent? Why are you better? What are the reasons why? Does everyone have a resume too? You know, we should also have a resume as part of our value proposition or a value platform. Some thoughts to consider too in this. If you're expanding this out and want to grow this value proposition, number one is, you know, who is your niche market? And then really hone in on what that consumer or what that branch of that market really enjoys and likes. You know, what is the hot buttons that get them moving, whether it's 55 and over, whether it is REO business, you know, maybe it's you know, there's a multitude of different niche markets that we could jump into. Maybe it's first-time home buyers exclusively that we only want to deal with. Figure out what they are. What can you offer clients that other agents can't? How do you tie that into the brand? How do you tie that into your business? And what are those thought processes that you can have that separates yourself and makes you the red tomato instead of the unripe green tomato? What makes you unique? And why are you the best choice for your clients? And the last thing is, can you sell your services in under 30 seconds? That's the key. Is to live and uphold your value proposition and your value platform as your real estate Bible for yourself. If you can't sell yourself in 30 seconds, there's a lot of work to do, because that means that you don't believe in your own value proposition, your own value platform. You should be excited about it. You should be able to sell it in 30 seconds. Back in the day, we used to do this activity where with newer agents, I used to give them a ton of business cards, 500 business cards. I used to take them out to the public, drop them off, and say, I'll be back in 3 hours, and you got to give away all these business cards. And I'll use a quick little story. Mark Cuccini was one of those sales associates back in the day, and we used to call them 7-second presentations. And Mark was a new agent. I don't know. Is Mark on this call? No. So Mark was a newer agent. He was a server at a restaurant called Izzy's in Marlton. And when I was at Coldwell Banker, I was a manager up in Medford. And he was one of my project agents. He's very successful now, very successful. One of the major things with Mark is he couldn't get out of his comfort zone. So in order to get him out of his comfort zone, I had to build a value proposition and a value platform for him and allow him to understand and recognize what his key strengths are and the ability to go sell them. So what was funny is I took him over to, I believe at the time, I want to say it's 70, there was motor vehicles, if you know where that's at. And I think there's an Acme right next to it. It was an Acme, or there was a grocery store right there. And I dropped him off and he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, you're going to give out those 500 business cards. He goes, okay. I said, and I'll be back. And I timed it 7 minutes times 500. I said, this is the time I'll be back. So you got to get rid of these things quick. So interesting story is he gave out all 500 business cards. Every single person that walked into the Acme or walked into the motor vehicle, he stuck out his hand. He said, hi, I'm Mark Cuccini from Coldwell Banker. If you know anybody looking to buy or sell. It was a 7-second presentation. He sold himself in 7 seconds. When I go to pick him up, a police officer comes walking out of the motor vehicles. Mark comes walking over, and the police officer said, is this one of your who is this guy? I said, oh, this is one of my sales associates. He's giving out. Well, he can't be here. He cannot be here doing this. He's soliciting business. He goes, this is motor vehicles. Mark looked at the cop, stuck out his hand and said, hi, I'm Mark Caccini from Coldwell Banker. If you know anybody looking to buy, it was classic. I got Mark in the car. We took off. We went back to the office. But getting him out of his comfort zone to do that, to be able to recognize and understand what his value, if you don't understand your value, you can't sell it. It's the same thing with the brand. You have to understand the brand, what the brand offers you, and you have to believe in that product in order to be able to sell it. Check this out. So some examples of some value propositions or USPs is what they're calling them in this thing is we're going to talk about the package shipping industry. So I have to get this package delivered quick. So what do they say? When it's absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. Who is that? Federal Express. Number 2, the food industry. The kids are starving, but mom and dad are too tired to cook. Pizza delivered in 30 minutes or it's free. That's Domino's, right? Domino's, that little saying right there is worth $1 billion. Real estate, example, real estate industry. People want to sell their houses fast without losing money on a deal. Our 20-step marketing system will sell your house in less than 45 days at full market value, okay? The last one, I'm going to stumble through this one. I tried to say this one as quickly as I could in this sentence, and I can't do it. You feel sick, feel terrible, and can't sleep. It's the nighttime coughing, achy, sniffling, stuffy head fever so you can rest medicine. That's NyQuil, right? All good things. They're value propositions. They're things that they're pushing out there that makes you, so anytime you hear that, you know what that's associated with. That's what you have to do. You have to come up with something that's associating yourself back to something. I'll give you a great example of one in our office. You ready? The guy does videos every day. He does memes every day. He puts everything in. Now, he needs to grow it a little bit more, but I still love his efforts. But we all know who Big Ed is, right? What does Big Ed do? Big Ed sells houses, right? 100 times a day, there's a meme out there. There's something that he's pushing out that he's branding into that. All right. Now, I'm going to get back into this. This jumps back into my first meeting, too. So as we pull out of that, we recognize that we're going down that first and second straightaway. We recognize that's our opportunity to pick up successful habits as compared to some of the unsuccessful habits that we may have. So we're dishing them out. We're getting rid of them. We're staying on that successful side. We've gone into our first turn. We recognize that we need to differentiate ourselves and separate ourselves from the competition. We need our value proposition. Now we're going to go into turn 2. We need the message. And the message is people that we can delay this information to. Let them know how great we are and what we do that's great. This is a true fact. And this fact was conducted in end of 2018. The National Association of Realtors reports that 80% of all real estate sales conducted in North America was pulled from a realtor's sphere of influence. 80%. I said this in the last meeting, and I'll say it again. Zillow's good, Realtor.com's good, lead gen is good, lead sources are good. The best thing is your sphere of influence and the people that you talk with on a daily basis. The people that you talk, they trust you. So how great is it that, if I wanted to sell a value proposition, and Stephen and I'll use him as an example again. We've known each other for many years. We worked at, this is our second place together, second company together. If I was to give Stephen my value proposition or my value platform, I would be taking a little more out of my comfort zone to begin with because we have that trust. And I feel that Stephen would listen to me. He would respect what I'm saying, and he would value what I'm saying more than talking to someone that has no idea who I am. So if I can take that time and that opportunity to get that message out, that's where I want to start. So if we take a look at the sphere of influence real quick, right? We want to break these down. This is a different way of doing it than how I normally teach this. Normally I teach this, you have a circle, you have branches, and your branches are your areas are your contacts are your people. Okay, it's like a big spider web. in today's market shift and market change, the way I want you to focus on it is we have a hot zone, a warm zone, cold zone, and cool zone, right? Cool and then cold, sorry. So in the hot zone, that's our center. That's our immediate family, close friends, and daily and weekly contacts that we're reaching out to. They're the ones that I want you on top of all the time. Let's break it out into the inner ring, which is the warm section. So in the inner ring, that's nearby family, social friends, church members, business associates, however you want to grow that, going back to the original concept of what I just said, where I was talking about the circle and the spider webs out. We get to the outer ring of the circle, right? That could be distant family, that could be neighbors, casual acquaintances, and then outside of our circle, which is all that in the white, that's, you know, it's people we don't know, people who we, you know, haven't been introduced to yet, but we're going to, and people who we have not established relationships to. But what's interesting is even at outside circle, they're going to eventually end up in that sphere of influence. And then we're going to start moving them through the different rings. And eventually we get them into the hot ring. That's where we want, but that's where we want to focus. You have to focus on making contact. And you need to be, now I don't want to be redundant with this because we talked about this a little bit. We want to be neutral and we want to be diplomatic. We want to make sure that we leave extreme opinions out of conversations that we're having. Extreme opinions are not an effective way to lead large groups of people, because you could have 10 people in a room, 5 could be on the left side, 5 could be on the right side. We're opinionated in the middle. We've effectively not relayed any information worth of value to anybody that's in that room. Make sense? So we want to stay positive. We want to stay neutral. And we want to give contributions of and providing information of adding value to what's going on these times when we're reaching out to the people in our sphere of influence. We want to provide solid information. Take a look at this and check this out. So let's say now you're a Remax agent, so you've been in the business for a while. You have a sphere of influence of 300 people. Now let's just say we take a look at those 300 people that's in that list, whether it's in the red ring, the orange ring, or the white ring, or wherever that is that comes out there, right? So we have 300 people. Out of the 300 people, we're going to contact each one of them. Now hear me out. Just hear me out. 40 times a year. You're like, 40 times a year. I cannot reach 300 people 40 times a year. There's only 52 weeks in a year, right? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down into different groups. We're going to email them. We could use social media direct messages. We could use phone calls. We could just do text messages. Some of them we could do mailers. There's 5 different ways right there, right? And if you repeat those scenarios throughout the course of the year, 40 touch points is not a far-fetched reality for 300 people. Because what's interesting about that is the more you reach out to them and the more difference in touch points, the more they recognize you as a leader and being busy and being successful. So if I was someone that was in somebody's sphere of influence, and I bought a house 2 years ago, and I get reached out to 1 time a year, it's not really doing anything for me. But if that person is reaching out to me in multitude of ways, they're not just blowing my phone up all the time. They're not calling me 40 times a year, but I may get an email from them. I may get a text message. I may get a phone call. I may get a Facebook PM or even a mailer. It makes me feel good. But what it also does is it makes me remember who you are. See, when I'm at parties, and not that I can do that now, but when I'm at a party and I don't know anything about real estate, but somebody wants to bring up real estate, I want to be that guy that says, I know a guy. Because everybody feels power when they're in the public and they know people that they can reference out, or they can give a recommendation on something. That creates power amongst that person. So instill that power into those people. Utilize your sphere of influence as your army. So out of 300 people, if I'm reaching out to those 40 times out of the year, I'm staying in front of them for them to do the work for me at the same time. If you can't envision that your sphere of influence is more important than any lead gen third-party company, then it's madness. It's absolute madness. This here goes back to the theory of you're not in the real estate business. Get out of the real estate business. You're in the people business. People is what's going to generate you money. People is what's going to generate you the income and the money. Some of the content, make sure the content we're getting out is meaningful, right? Not opinionated. And let's also make sure that we're just having basic, friendly, loving conversations. Meaning, hey, listen, I'm just reaching out during these times right now. I'm just reaching out to you because I care and I was thinking about you today. That goes so much further than, hi, this is Stephen Clyde calling from Remax. We haven't spoken in a year, but I wanted to reach out to you and say, are you ready to sell your house? What? No. But if the call was reversed, hey, I was thinking about you today. I just wanted to reach out and say hi and see how you're doing. That's a real warm and fuzzy right there. That would make me be like, oh yeah, I'm at the party. You know what? Hand me the White Claw. I'm referring you Stephen. Right? All right. Now check this out. Talk about some numbers with this stuff. So 300 people, we have 300 people in the sphere of influence. We're reaching out to those people 40 times a year, right? You can estimate that it's a 7-to-1 return. That means for every 7 people in your SOI database, you should receive one side of business. Now that one side of business doesn't mean that it's coming from any one of those 7 people. But here's the interesting fact. On a low number, out of those 300 people, if each one of them know 100 people, you're indirectly communicating indirectly to 30,000 people. Think about those numbers. We're sitting here waiting for Zillow to ring. We're sitting here waiting for Realtor.com ring, and those phones ring. And by the way, I'm paying them $300, $400, $500, $100 or $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500. This is free. These are your people. This is your army, right? You can't tell me that one of those 300 people, every one of those 300 people don't know at least 75 to 100 people. They do. And if you utilize those 40 touch points and you stay in front of them, they're always going to be first in your mind, in their mind, especially when somebody asks them about real estate or if they're looking to do something in real estate. The number one pitfall with sphere of influence is we obsess over a CRM. What is the best one? What is the newest one? What is this CRM? What does this CRM do? I remember when we got into this business and CRM started to come out, the first one was Top Producer. Top Producer came out in the very beginning. It was 3.5-inch floppy drives. And we used to stick them into the computer, and then an update would come like a couple months later when we'd have new 3.5-inch floppy drives. Is that what you even called them back in the day, 3.5-inch floppy drives? I think so. And then they went to an online database, an online portal where you logged in, and it was so hard to even use or understand. We probably used 2% of what the program was actually allowing us to do. Don't stress over that. That's where you fail because you're so worried about the CRM. You're so worried about what's going to be the best one to use. Nothing ever gets done because when our mindset, we can't get out of our own way to grow, we move to the blue side, the blue column. We don't stay on the green column. Remember, the green column is where we want to be. So always refer to those columns when you're thinking about this stuff. Get out of your own way. On a CRM, what I would always recommend you to do when it comes to sphere of influence and lead gen is always create your CRM in an Excel spreadsheet. Everything, your CRM, your sphere of influence Bible gets created in an Excel spreadsheet. The reason why is I can import and export them out of any program and always still have that information. A lot of times agents will find the newest CRM program, they'll spend hours and hours or they'll pay and they'll spend countless time and money importing this data entry into a CRM to find out that when they're done, they can't export any of that information. Lost time, lost money, just puts you on the blue side, right? Utilize Utilize the tabs on the bottom. They're your circles. They're your groups. And then work on the following: first name, last name, address, telephone number, and notes. That's all you need. And then utilize that Bible. Your sphere of influence, what that does for you is it creates the long-term results. Now is the most critical time and the best time to do that with the downtime that some of us have. I've heard two sides of the story. I've heard agents that are out there consistently working. I don't want to say hard. They're consistently working, right? Everybody works hard on the blue side, not smart. So they're consistently working, and when they're working, they're producing deals. They're finding some time for themselves. And then I have agents that are completely wanting to shut themselves down. They don't want to show houses. They don't want to do any business. They feel like they have some money in the bank. Remember, again, what you do today will affect you in 90 days. If you're on that side of the coin where whether you're, I don't want to use the word fearful. I'll use the word smart fearful, okay, maybe because of the virus, or you could have health conditions or that could create an adverse effect on yourself. What I want you to do is utilize that time to start building this side of the business. Work on going into the straightaway. Work on going into the terms, navigating through the terms, and creating that sphere of influence. A couple other things to consider, some activities that I want you to work on. So when it comes to lead gen, right, in order to do these things, you have to control your mindset. Number one, engage in your SOI. Number two, embrace social media. Be a guru at that. 3, learn how to use video. 4, video conferencing is huge. Everything that we're doing right now is video conferencing. Know how to use that and create the CRM action plan. We know that we have digital marketing channels. So our digital marketing channels is our website. These are different avenues that you can explore. Obviously, we know Instagram, we know Twitter, 50 million plus users, 15 billion plus users in Facebook, Google, YouTube. I have agents that utilize Snapchat. I have agents, I won't use a name, that utilizes Snapchat. And what they do is they reach out to their friends, which is considered in their sphere of influence, through Snapchat, using the crazy Snapchat filters where you change your face and your voice changes, and they have great conversations, and they send them out, and they get the greatest responses back. Because whether it's not real estate based, it's just something simple that they made somebody in their sphere of influence, or someone that they just made them laugh for the day. Well, that's all they needed right now. Email marketing, LinkedIn, affiliate marketing, all different avenues that you can jump into. Some lead follow-up stuff, we recognize there's 4 different things, right? Call comes in, we have to answer the call, you have a response time, and when they're going to get back to you. So most internet leads go cold in about 5 minutes, 5 minutes or less, right? Now there's different theories on these. Approximately 50% of leads don't get followed up at all. And this average that I'm going to get ready to show you, I've confirmed this average between Zillow being one platform, and then the National Association of Realtors. Anybody have an idea of what the national average response time to a lead is? Anybody know that answer? $44 hours. 44 hours. So your response time to leads cannot be 48 hours. It has to be immediate, right? 78% of sales go to the first responder, right? Don't let somebody else in the lead gen beat you. Now, Chris Valiante is very good at this, where he jumps in and he modifies himself to that 10-point contact system part of that. You'll see that percentages of sales between 0 to 100 start to increase around 6 to 8 points of contact. So too often what starts to happen with us is we make an initial call, we don't make the second call, The third call, we're just scared. The fourth call, we're waiting and hoping they're going to call us back. And the fifth call, they never call, right? So they say on average 1.29 of those percents of those calls is a follow-up. 6 to 8 is the average number of calls before the customer is ready to even move forward. So it might take you 6 to 8 calls for them to start being responsive or for them to start even getting back to you, right? After 9 is where it starts to diminish. They're probably not interested. You start hitting 10, 11, 12, and so down the line. But that's where you want to be. You want to make sure that you're not giving up. Now, this is totally separate from sphere of influence, because even sphere of influence, you can leave messages. But during your lead gen, make sure that you're following up and you're continuously calling. Don't be afraid. Chris Valiente is very good at calling until they say to him, hey, stop calling me. You're almost harassing me, right? There was an old analogy that we used to use back in the day. Don Brogan, I don't know if anybody remembers Don Brogan, where he used to teach us the dollarization of activities. Now, we talked about that in my first group that I did, as far as taking your activities and dollarizing them and seeing, what your cost effectiveness and your time is in that activity. One thing that he used to do, and you can utilize this in phone calls when he tell you to leave you alone at that point, is when we used to farm and we used to go knock doors and all that crazy stuff. So we would go into a development, maybe the development had 200-300 houses, and we would knock on a door, and we were afraid of ourselves because we didn't know if anybody was going to come screaming, hollering at us, or if they were just going to, let us in and let us list a house, or we would just have a nice conversation. So he said, what I want you to do is change your mindset. He says, when you knock doors, you're not there technically to create a friendship, in a sense. You're not there to get yelled at and create emotion based upon that. But what you are there to do is this. You're going to take the highest sale price in that development. You're going to divide it amongst the amount of houses that's in that development, and that's going to give you an average. And then you're going to take that and divide that amongst the time that you're in that development knocking the doors. He goes, and when you go to the door and you knock on the door, and the homeowner comes to the door, and he walks out, and whether he screams and hollers at you, whether he introduces himself, whether he's nice to you, creates an appointment, whatever the relationship situation is, when you shake their hand, you say in your mind, thank you for my $200, and you move to the next house. Thank you for my $200. You go to the next house. Thank you for my $200. So you're changing the mindset that you're there to make money, and eventually you're going to get a listing. You're going to sell a listing, and everyone paid you $200 to do that. Just a different mindset. Continue that mindset into your calls until they tell you to stop, but don't give up. That's the number one thing that usually happens. I'll hear agents that are paying, this is honest truth. I know an individual that's paying close to $2,000 a month for lead generation, right? Will not utilize the sphere of influence. Will not utilize the sphere of influence. I'll say that for a third time. Will not utilize the sphere of influence, but will only make 1 or 2 calls on a lead gen call. So I basically said, how about you do this? How about you pay me the $1,500 or the $2,000, and I'll call you every day. Just to call you. I won't say nothing, but I'll hang up on you because you're never going to call me back. Loss of opportunity, loss of money. Now, if we take that same agent and we talk about comfort zone, that right there shows me why that same person or that same agent won't call their sphere of influence, because they can't get out of their comfort zone to do that. They have a hard time with conversation. They have a hard time with flow of conversation. Maybe they're not scripted enough to understand objection, or how to overcome objection, or have role played enough to recognize that if this person says this is where I'm going to go. Skate to where the puck's going, not to where the puck has been, right? So if we're role playing back and forth and Steven says something as the consumer and I'm stuck where the puck is, Steven's mind is now over where the puck's going because he has his next question in mind, but I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to navigate that. These are all mindset things. Work on objection handling, work on role playing, work on scripting. But the number one thing you have to work on is getting on the phones. Getting on the phones. And the number one place to do that to start is with your sphere of influence. The people that trust you, the people that know you, the people that hopefully love you, the people that hopefully think that you're great, that you can role play with them during this time. You can practice with them. You can get out of the real estate business. You can get into the people business. You can get belly to belly back to people. And you can have just some honest conversations, whether they're real estate related or not. Remember Blue's Clues? Blue's Clues was a TV show that was built for children, and they used the same episode every day for a week. So if you remember having children during that time, as parents, I wanted to shoot myself come Sunday because I remember everything Steve said and Mailbox said starting on Monday, right? But it was the same thing over and over and over because we learn by repetition. When you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, as long as it's for learning and you're a sponge, you're going to retain that information. You're going to be able to grow. And what's going to happen is this cool little thing that's called growth. So as you're making these calls, as you're getting yourself stronger on the phone, as you're having you're building relationships at the same time, you're navigating through turn 2 in order to hit the next straightaway. You're building your army. People are now out there talking about you and this wonderful value proposition and value platform that you have that you can now sell in under 30 seconds because you have taken the time to reach out to 300 people at least 40 times a year. The only thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a green machine. And cash is going to start rolling in because people are going to love you. They're going to share your information. They're going to start sharing your value proposition, your value platform, because they're going to now believe, because you're able to sell it so well, that they're going to believe it. And then they're going to sell it for you. Take the time and believe in yourself and do it. Check this out. Prospecting conversion rates, right? So let's jump onto the side of taking Zillow calls, all those different ones. They're averaging contacts per hour on a beginner 1 through 5, moderate 6 to 8, an experienced agent can make 9 to 11 calls in an hour because they know what to say, when to say, and how to get off the phone. Where a beginner may not know how to get off the phone, may not know how to end the conversation on a note and move forward. Contacts to appointments. If you're a beginner, believe it or not, it could take you 150 contacts to get one appointment. And when you practice and you improve and you polish the words of what your value proposition is, you're going to move into the next level, which is the moderate level. And it may take you 60 contacts in order to get one. And then when you practice, you improve, you polish the words of the goods that you sell, you move into the experience category, and it could be 25 to 1. And those conversations are easier. Then they talk about, appointments to listings. It may take you 10 appointments as a beginner to get 4 listings. As you start practicing and improving, you move into the moderate, your mindset's changing, right? You're working on the successful side of things. Now you're 10 to 6. Now you're really great. You're in the experience side. You've been doing this a while. You have a little bit under your belt. The key thing is you don't know everything, so you're constantly learning, right? We're out of our comfort zone. We're experienced. We're working on, transformational side of business, not just transactional side. All these different things between green and blue. We recognize that It may take 10 appointments for us to get 8 listings. Major change. So we start to hit the finish line. So as the car is going around these turns, like I said, we went down a straightaway, value proposition. We jumped into sphere of influence, navigating through, building business. We hit the other stretch. Now we're hitting the end. If we don't do any of those things right now, if we don't work on moving into the successful side or successful mindsets, or if we don't move into our sphere of influence, getting out of our comfort zone, reaching out to people who care about us, there's only one thing that's going to happen. And that's either we're going to crash or burn, or we're going to learn, we're going to move forward, we're going to embrace change, right? And we're going to cross the finish line. And when you cross the finish line, the only way you can cross that finish line is to be that red tomato. Because if not, everyone's crossing at the same time or beyond everybody in the back. Be the red tomato, stand out, finish how to get yourself through the line. Anybody know who that is? Anybody? No? I'm going to give you a saying, and I absolutely love this, and I said it about 3 or 4 times throughout the PowerPoint that I just did. And if you listen to what this quote is, it makes so much sense, especially for your business and everything that we just talked about. Ready? It says, I will practice and improve and polish the words I utter to sell my goods, for this is a foundation on which I will build my career. And never will I forget that many have obtained great wealth and success with only one sales talk delivered with excellence. So think about that. Think about your value proposition, your value platform. One sales talk delivered with excellence. Sometimes you may not get another opportunity. That's the world's greatest salesman. Does anybody know who that is? He is literally hands down known as the world's greatest salesman. It's Mandino. Anybody know who he is? Look him up. Read his books. I encourage you to. Look him up and read his books. Absolutely phenomenal, hands down. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have anything else that they, wow, I did that exactly in 59 minutes. Anybody have any questions that they want to throw out there? Or Randall, is he still here?
Yep, I'm here. You got me?
Yep, I got you.
I think it was a very informative class, and I'm looking at the Zoom notes or the chats. Some of the key things that you touched on, I think, is top of mind. I saw Abe put that up. You really want to be the person that people think about when they think about real estate. And if you're hitting them 40 times, 5 different ways to get to that 40 times, they're going to remember you. And I'm seeing where Chris Valiente put in there, most agents give up after 2 times. Why would you spend all that money just to give up on those leads? It takes far more than that to get people to convert.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everyone should read the book, The World's Greatest Salesman, Stephen Clyde says.
There you go, Stephen.
So I guess maybe, and even bringing it down to what we're doing here, you guys really have to push on the video so much more.
Yep.
I'm sure that, no one on this call believes that, for the last, 20 years, I've been like sitting on my butt, not doing anything, trying to grow the company. But I can tell you that in the last 3 weeks, I have heard from so many of you guys how I'm just so much more visible and I'm so much more there. And the only difference is, we're doing Zoom calls and you get to see our faces. You get to see me and, Kevin and the other, the managers, they're, doing the classes, so it seems as though we're, there more. And I think that would translate right over to your client base also. And it's not like you're not working now, but if they could see your face more often, or if they had more contacts from you, like we're doing with our office now, it's really been transformable. Was it the word transformable? Yeah, it's been a great transformation. And what else do we see? Awesome Book 1 and 2. Bomb Bomb is the way to go for video. Yeah, so we got to get out there, and people need to see our face and connect with us. And I think that's one of the things that Kevin was promoting, right?
Yeah, definitely. And an exercise that I want you to be able to do for yourselves too, while you have some downtime, is if you revert back to the green to the blue sides, they're critical and they're really important. But understand, like, real estate is a business that is challenging and hard, but only as challenging as hard as we want it to be and what we make it. So if we can't get out of our comfort zone, that's where we always struggle, because comfort zone is an activity that's never going to get done, or it's something that we're never going to touch or we're never going to do. So what I mean by that is, take yourself and jot yourself down on page 1 everything that you do in your business that you love to do and you enjoy to do. And then on page 2, write down everything that you have a hard time doing, or, believe it or not, that you may be even afraid to do. Okay? And if you want to send them to me, send them to me. And I'll call you and we can do this. We can go over them together, because that circle, unless you get both feet out of that circle, you're always going to be stuck in the middle. And being stuck in the middle could mean the difference of thousands and thousands of dollars, because you're just fearful or afraid to do something that is never going to hurt you. Nothing that we do in this business hurts you. It's just gaining that confidence of being to get that one foot out and then let the other foot come with it. And sometimes we need help doing that. We just need a little push, because we may not understand exactly the right process to do it, or we need a non-judgmental person that can sit here and listen to us and laugh with us because we do it wrong or we don't do it right. But we have to get out of our own mindset too, that not everything's going to be perfect, and that's okay if it's not perfect. If it's not perfect, it just allows us to practice more and to practice harder in order to make ourselves more comfortable. I can tell you right now too, like I'll use Stephen, Alan Antuzzi, just names that are popping in my mind. Stephen, Alan Antuzzi, and Chris Valiente, for example, and even Marcy Ireland. So if I use Stephen, I don't think there's anything video-wise that he won't do. Maybe one. I know one, but I'm not going there. We'll leave that one out.
All right. We're being taped.
But he's very good with everything that, as far as the video side of things, and feeling comfortable to do that. But something had to get him to that point to be able to do that. One of the greatest sales associates or agents that and if you ever want to know how to do it, or objection handling, and I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you I've been with a lot of sales associates. Alan Antuzzi is probably the best objection handler I have ever heard on the phones.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to call him and just have a conversation with him, when I was up in Cherry Hill, I remember I would, just for the fun of it, he would walk past. I was like, "Hey, come in here. What's up now? All right, we're going to role play." He's like, "We are again?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to role play." He's like, "I'm good at this." I'm like, "Well, apparently I'm not, because there's not an objection that I can give you that you can not overcome." And we would literally play back and forth where I was the seller or I was the buyer, and every time he had some rebuttal or something that made sense that would shut me down and remove my objection. So I say to him, I say, "Alan, how did you get so good at that?" He goes, "I practiced. My father told me to practice this. I practice it. I do it over and over and over. I would role play with my father all the time." He goes, "I used to hate it when I first started." And the key for him is when he's on the phone, sometimes he would originally get nervous. But what made him not get nervous, and this was his little trick, is he walks. So he'll stand in his office And when he makes phone calls, he'll walk back and forth. He paces from the door to his computer, from the door to his computer. But that's what he needs to get him out of his comfort zone in order to make those phone calls happen and work, right? Marcy Ireland, if there's a complaint or something that needs to be handled, she is exceptional at being able to take a bad or potentially bad negative situation and turn it good, right? That's a strength of hers. Valiente is very big on not giving up when it comes to phone calls, when it comes to returning lead gen, paid opportunities. He looks at that. He's dollarized them down to realize that that's money out of his pocket. So he is so good at staying on top of them until they say, "Hey, Chris, this is almost like the H word. I feel like you're kind of harassing me in a sense here. Stop calling me. Thank you for your time." Just little key things. So make those notes. Figure out what you're good at. Figure out what you struggle with, because what you struggle with could be thousands and thousands of dollars, and let's collectively work together and figure out what they are. You can reach out to me, give me a call, jump on a Zoom call with me, whatever you feel those shortcomings or fears may be, let me know, because I'll do them together with you, and I won't share them with the world. I won't share them with anybody. We don't ever want to share fears, but we're going to turn those fears into comfort is what we'll end up doing. All right, that's all I got.
Hey, Kevin, so I just kind of want to touch base, and then I see Stephen Clyde has his hand up, and then we'll wrap things up. But everybody is afraid in the beginning of video. They're afraid of how bad you look, or if you're not going to say the right thing, or if you're going to stammer or whatever. But as you say, when you practice, you get better and better, and then it becomes easier to be on there. And the one point that I want to say is, if you're going to make money in the future in this business, you're going to have to get on the video. You're going to have to put the videos out there. You're going to have to start communicating with videos. And someone told me one day that their worst video that they've ever put out is going to return more money than my no video that I didn't do. So doing something is going to be better than doing nothing. And the more somethings you do, the better that you get at it. So, Stephen, go ahead. Let's make sure you're unmuted. Are you unmuted?
I'm unmuted. So I was just going to touch on two things that Kevin brought up that have been keeping us going through this, which is calling the sphere and the video. And I think the same principle applies to both of them. Stop thinking about it. Just call the entire database, right? For whatever reason, I had a loan officer that worked on a deal from 2 years ago in my database. I don't know why they were there, but I dialed the phone yesterday. And last night I got a nice referral for a pre-approved jumbo buyer. I just happened to be now top of mind to that loan officer. They had a buyer that didn't have an agent. So I was the last person they talked to. It came to me. And we've been building that over the last 2 weeks. 5 new buyers, 4 new listings coming online, just from calling everyone and not thinking about who it is. That includes my niece, my sister, family members. Don't overthink that they remember who you are, or you don't have to remind them. Remind them, stay top of mind. If anybody looks at my Facebook, they'll see my niece's post where I send everybody a virtual gift card to a local restaurant. She's got multiple comments on there linking back to me, basically becoming future referrals. So don't overthink it. Just reach out to them, touch base with them. And the same thing on the video, follow the Gary V principle. Shoot, ready, aim. Shoot the video, post it up there, put your comments. The more you flub, the more you screw up, the more engaging the video is, right? No one wants the professional video. They want us flubbing a little bit, stepping on our words, doing a little forgetting where you're at. And you're going to get more engagement. Just get over it, right? Get over yourself and get over it and just move forward with it. Don't be embarrassed by it. Randall's right. The more you put out there, the more you're going to get. And my bad one is better than the one you didn't do. It's kind of like the old running prospect. I may run as fast as a turtle stuck in molasses, but I'm still faster than the person sitting on the couch. It's the same thing with video and picking up the phone. If you make one, you're still better than the person that's still watching Real Housewives. but you're better off making 100. So our funnel is full. Our closings are coming to be, and it's all from calling the database directly and reaching out and writing notes and making phone calls. So if you do those simple, basic things that require no money, you will come out of this making a ton of money.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that's, I think that that's a good spot to stop today.
Can I
wanna
just say
thank-
something real quick?
Oh, go ahead. I didn't see another hand up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to kind of back up with what Stephen just said. So, the last 3 years at R4, I always go, me personally, I go to all the technology classes. And for 3 years in a row now, probably even more, they talk about video, 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 video. And they say less than 10% of the agents out there are actually doing video. And they said one of the biggest complaints that people have is, I don't like the way I look, I don't like the way I sound. And you have to realize that how you sound and how you look are how everybody else sees you. And you can't worry about it. You just have to do it and just get past it and get over it and start sending out videos. Send out videos to every person you know. You get a lead, don't, you can call a lead, of course, but you've got a phone number there, you got an email there, do a video, send it over to them. Don't worry if it, like Steven said, if you mess up, you mess up, you mess up. That's part of being human. You can always re-record it if you mess up too bad, but just get past it. Once you start doing it, you'll get comfortable with it and you'll continue to do it and you'll make more conversions.
Well, thank you very much. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Well, I guess that's the end. What do we do? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank everybody for coming in. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, you guys know that we're here for you, right?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Randall.
All righty.
See you, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.